Hello there, my name is Shinsuke Nonaka, and I work at Studio Ghibli. The documentary you're about to see explores the birth of a film and the birth of a studio. The film is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and the studio is, you guessed it, Studio Ghibli. There'll be plenty of interviews, film clips, and recreations of actual events. Parts of this program first aired on Japanese television after the release of Princess Mononoke. We hope you'll have fun retracing the history of Studio Ghibli. The recreations use actors to portray people at Studio Ghibli. We've made sure they reproduce every quirk, including the body language of the people they're playing. Watch closely and you'll get a good idea of what it's like to spend time with Hayao Miyazaki and Toshio Suzuki.
Who's that guy with Hayao Miyazaki? Here he is again at a screening. And at an exhibition. On the street. At a party. In the studio. Wherever Miyazaki goes, he always seems to be there. Meet Toshio Suzuki, chief producer of Studio Ghibli. As Miyazaki says, finding a good producer is the best thing that can happen to a director. How did a reporter for one of Japan's muckraking weeklies team up with Hayao Miyazaki to become one of Japan's most successful producers? It all started with a phone call. In 1978, Toshio Suzuki was assigned to help start a new monthly devoted to animation. The magazine was called Animage. Suzuki was 29 years old. When he started, he didn't know the first thing about animation. 20 years later, he produced the first animated feature in Japan's history to gross more than 10 billion yen at the box office. How did he do it? For 6 years, Suzuki covered nothing but murders, mobsters, and celebrity scandals. When he discovered one day he was being transferred to a new animation magazine, it was like a bolt from the blue. An animation magazine? One of Suzuki's jobs at the new magazine was a monthly column on animated classics. His first choice was The Little Norse Prince Valiant, directed by Isao Takahata. The Little Norse Prince Valiant took an unflinching look at important social issues. It was the first Japanese animated film for young adults. Director Isao Takahata was 27. Hayao Miyazaki was only 22 and just starting out. Takahata recognized his talent and made him one of the key animators on Prince Valiant. Suzuki wanted a few comments from the director for his column, so he picked up the phone and called Takahata. By 1978, Takahata was already a giant in the world of animation. No one could have guessed that phone call would lead to one of the most successful collaborations in Japanese animation. This was the call that led to the birth of Studio Ghibli. To his astonishment, what Suzuki got from Takahata was a 1-hour explanation of why he couldn't give any comments on Prince Valiant. Then Takahata called someone else to the phone. This was Suzuki's first encounter with Hayao Miyazaki. Miyazaki was different. He said he'd comment on Prince Valiant, and he wanted 16 pages in Animage for his comments. In the end, Suzuki couldn't get a single comment out of either Takahata or Miyazaki.
To be honest, I wondered what was with these guys.
Suzuki never forgot that phone call, and the following year, he found himself covering a new animated feature directed by Miyazaki. The Castle of Cagliostro was Miyazaki's first film as a director. Over the years, Cagliostro has lost none of its impact and stands as a masterpiece of the art of animation. This was the film that prompted Suzuki to visit Miyazaki for the first time. Suzuki wanted to interview Miyazaki on his new feature, but Miyazaki almost completely ignored him. He wouldn't even pose for photos. All Suzuki could get was this one shot. The toy Miyazaki is holding is something he turns to for help when he runs into problems animating a scene. If he catches the ball, he bets the scene will go well. At first, he could only catch it 20% of the time. But with practice, he was able to catch it every time. He still reaches for it whenever he has problems animating a scene. The Castle of Cagliostro was not a box office hit. But Suzuki was amazed at the quality of the animation. He started running regular features on Miyazaki's work in the pages of his magazine. After their first meeting on Cagliostro, Suzuki was destined to spend most of his time working with Miyazaki. After they got to know each other better, Suzuki found himself discussing film concepts with Miyazaki. Miyazaki was overflowing with stories he dreamed of animating. Suzuki decided to help him realize some of the ideas he talked about so passionately. One of the stories that excited Miyazaki was the basic concept for Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Suzuki was convinced Nausicaa would make a great animated feature. Before he knew it, he was working hard to help Miyazaki realize the dream of bringing Nausicaa to the screen. Animated features were usually promoted through tie-ins with existing properties, such as comic books. So when Suzuki tried to pitch the idea of making Nausicaa, he was turned down flat. What's the point of a feature without a comic to support the promotion? If Suzuki had given up, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind would never have seen the light of day. But Suzuki showed the determination that was soon to make him a successful producer. If they wouldn't let Miyazaki make Nausicaa without a comic book version first, then Miyazaki would make one for them. And so, in 1982, the comic book version of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind made its debut in Animage. A year later, Nausicaa was the most popular feature in the magazine. A reader's poll put it among the top 5 titles ever serialized in Animage. The story was released in paperback and started to attract media attention. Nausicaa's popularity continued to build, and finally Miyazaki got the green light to start working on a feature version. Miyazaki's passion and the passion Suzuki brought to realizing Miyazaki's vision had finally borne fruit. With Takahata producing and Miyazaki directing, work on Nausicaa attracted top animation talent from all over Japan. Suzuki did his part to raise awareness of Nausicaa through the pages of Animage. In late 1983, work on Nausicaa fell behind schedule due to Miyazaki's demanding standards. With Suzuki's support, Animage printed an urgent call for more animators to help on the feature.
Then one day he just showed up. Afterwards I realized how much guts it must have taken to walk right in and hand Miyazaki samples of his work.
The brusque young man who came to see Miyazaki that day would soon rock the world of Japanese animation. He traveled to Tokyo after seeing the call for help in Animage. He knocked on Miyazaki's door, pulled out a storyboard he'd created, and shoved it into Miyazaki's hands. He's got talent. Miyazaki realized immediately the boy was a natural and made a daring decision. He assigned him to animate the giant warrior, a 1,000-year-old destroyer of civilization that figures in the climax of Nausicaa.
For Miyazaki, this is one of the key scenes in the movie, but animating something like this is a huge challenge. Sure, if you aren't looking to show people something they've never seen, anyone could animate this sequence. But Miyazaki wanted something with impact, very detailed, with a unique sense of movement. It's really a high point of the film.
And this is what audiences saw. The way the young man animated the giant warrior, the explosions, and the movement of tanks in Nausicaa amazed even Miyazaki. The young man's name was Hideaki Anno. Years later, in 1997, his animated feature Neon Genesis Evangelion appeared the same summer as Princess Mononoke. But in contrast to Anno's dark world view, the promotional copy for Princess Mononoke consisted of a single word: live. And so, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind was finally completed. It was a story of environmental destruction told through Miyazaki's unique animation. Nausicaa was an immediate hit with nearly 1 million tickets sold. Long lines greeted the film on its opening day. Suzuki was amazed. All these people were here to see Nausicaa. This was the day he had worked for so long. Takahata, Miyazaki, and Suzuki decided to continue making animated features. To do this, they needed a studio to work from. Suzuki continued as editor of Animage, but his involvement in animated films took another big step.